Welcome, traveler of thoughts and dreamer of quiet skies. Beneath the veil of evening, where the stars shimmer like distant neurons firing in the mind of the cosmos, we begin a journey into the heart of your imagination. Deep within the folds of the human brain, nearly 86 billion neurons whisper stories that stretch farther than galaxies and dive deeper than oceans. In 2021, scientists discovered that the brain's structural networks mirror the pattern of the known universe itself, a poetic architecture linking the cosmos above to the consciousness within. Tonight, we explore 100 gentle truths about your imagination, each fact a quiet stepping stone across the dim-lit river of rest, guiding you to slumber one mystery at a time. If you enjoy these gentle science journeys, I invite you to like and subscribe, or share a favorite fact in the comments. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. For now, there's nothing you need to do but rest. Settle in, breathe deeply, and let's begin. Fact 1. Imagination begins even before birth. In the womb, as early as week 23, a baby's brain begins to exhibit patterns of neural connectivity that hint at the future architecture of thought, dreams, and creativity. These early signals, like the first ripples on a still pond, suggest that the mind's sandbox is already forming long before a child's first word or step. The brain is quietly sketching the blueprint of what will one day become a vast inner world, ready to host entire universes of wonder with nothing more than thought and quiet breath. Fact 2. The human imagination can simulate entire worlds in less than a heartbeat. Within 1/10 of a second, the brain can conjure vivid mental images, drawing on memory, emotion, and instinct. It doesn't matter whether you've seen a mountain before or only read about one. Once imagined, the mind paints every ridge and snowcap in precise detail. This speed of creation outpaces even the blink of an eye and renders with more nuance than early photography ever could. Your imaginative mind continuously transforms what is known into what might be possible, like light passing through a prism to create a spectrum of color, silently crafting landscapes that exist nowhere else but within your consciousness, unique to you alone, a private gallery of wonder that accompanies you everywhere. Fact 3. Daydreaming activates the same brain regions as actual sensory perception and memory recall. When you let your thoughts drift, whether to a quiet beach or a glowing forest unseen by any eye but yours, your brain lights up as though those places are real. The precuneus, the medial prefrontal cortex, and the posterior cingulate cortex all begin to stir, a trio of quiet architects behind the scenes. These resting state networks hum softly, like the low vibration of distant thunder, crafting bridges between the imagined and the remembered. Scientists often refer to this as the default mode network, but here, in this drowsy hush, you might think of it as your inner constellation, connecting stars of thought while your body rests, like the earth beneath a sleeping sky. Fact 4. The imagination thrives in silence. In moments when external stimulation quiets, such as during meditation or just before sleep, the brain leans inward, turning its energy toward inner landscapes and untold narratives. In these intervals, the thalamus slows its relay of incoming sensory information, acting like a curtain gently closing across the stage of waking life. Studies using fMRI scans show that the frontal and parietal lobes regions linked to abstract thought and planning, become more engaged when the world outside dims. It is here, in this hush, that the mind's brush paints its boldest strokes, conjuring places that speak no language but that of quiet feeling. A forest where each leaf shimmers with memory, or a floating city adrift beneath aurora skies, all come alive without a single sound, born only from the deep well of your inner night. Fact 5. The act of imagining movement lights up the motor cortex, the same region that controls actual physical motion. If you picture yourself dancing slowly under starlight or walking barefoot across a moonlit path, your brain rehearses each subtle step through invisible signals. No muscles move, yet the neural pathways ripple as if preparing your limbs for delicate choreography. This phenomenon, known as motor imagery, creates what neuroscientists call an efference copy, a neural simulation of expected sensory consequences. This internal rehearsal can improve real performance, which is why athletes and musicians often visualize their actions before they perform. But here, in the still quiet of your bedtime thoughts, this silent dancing becomes something softer, a soulful lullaby played out through the mere suggestion of motion, gently whispering the body toward rest, even as the mind quietly glides across imagined skies, each fictive movement like a quiet pendulum swinging toward slumber. Fact 6. Imagination does not only live in the conscious mind. Even during sleep, the imagination remains quietly active, expressing itself most vividly during rapid eye movement, or REM, sleep. In this phase, which typically begins around 90 minutes after falling asleep, brain activity rises to levels remarkably similar to waking states. The limbic system, especially the amygdala and hippocampus, engages in crafting the emotional and spatial depth of dreams, while the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the region tied to logic and decision-making, becomes less active. This shift means that the barriers of reality soften, allowing absurdity to blend seamlessly with memory. A cat with wings, a library beneath the sea, a stranger who seems achingly familiar. These are the quiet gifts of a dreaming imagination, weaving surreal stories in the deepest hours, like whispers from a secret realm where gravity softens and time forgets itself. Neuroimaging studies reveal that during this dreaming state, visual processing centers activate despite closed eyes, creating a private cinema projected onto the dark canvas of sleep, where impossible narratives unfold with the profound conviction that only dreams can conjure. Fact 7. The brain's ability to imagine future events is known as episodic future thinking, a quiet skill that allows us to simulate not just what might happen next, but how it might feel. This soft mental time travel relies on the hippocampus, the same region that stores memories of the past. It's as if memory and imagination share a winding corridor, mirrors on opposite walls reflecting both before and beyond. When you picture a sunrise you've never seen, or a conversation yet to be had, your mind builds a soft prelude, weaving hopes, fears, and dreams into a gentle tapestry of possibility. This process, though subtle, is central to planning, creativity, and the quiet rehearsal of life itself. While your body rests and the world outside grows still, your imagination strolls comfortably forward through meadows that have yet to bloom, patiently composing tomorrow from the threads of today and yesterday, like a lullaby made of what hasn't happened yet. Neuroscience research reveals that this future-oriented imagination activates a network spanning the medial temporal lobe and prefrontal cortex, creating mental simulations with emotional texture as rich as memories themselves. A cognitive gift that transforms abstract time into vivid emotional landscapes, even as you drift towards sleep. Fact 8. The foundation of imaginary worlds is built not only upon memory, but also upon something called the semantic network, a delicate web of interconnected meanings and associations. When you think of the word garden, your brain may quietly summon the scent of jasmine, the cool shade of leaves, or the hush of soil under bare feet. Each of these fragments, drawn from experience and understanding, becomes material for the imagination's quiet architect. Neuroscientists have found that this network is highly flexible, allowing the brain to recombine ideas in novel ways, creating concepts that have never existed before. The semantic network makes it possible to imagine a waterfall made of starlight, or a library whose books whisper instead of turn pages. These mental recombinations, soft as wind through trees, form an infinite palette from which dreams are painted, their roots wound through meaning, memory, and mystery alike. Recent studies using diffusion tensor imaging reveal that these semantic connections physically manifest as white matter pathways linking language areas with sensory cortices, creating neural bridges between words and sensations, concepts and emotions. As you rest now, these pathways continue their gentle work, weaving threads between distant islands of knowledge, creating new possible worlds within the quiet geography of your mind. Fact 9. Imagination can conjure multisensory experiences without any external input. When you close your eyes and picture a crackling fire, you may not only see the flickering flames, but also hear each subtle pop, feel the warmth on your skin, even breathe in the faint scent of wood smoke. This phenomenon is known as cross-modal imagery, where the brain activates multiple sensory regions simultaneously, even in the absence of external stimuli. Functional MRI scans have revealed that vivid visual imagination lights up the occipital lobe, while imagined sounds recruit the auditory cortex, and phantom textures call upon somatosensory areas. These layered simulations combine to create immersive scenes that seem almost tangible, stitched together by the silent symphony of your brain's intuitive storytelling. It's in this multisensory fabric that dreams gather their realism, and imaginings find their weight, floating gently behind closed eyes, like ships sailing on synesthetic seas, carrying you slowly into the gentle harbor of sleep. Researchers at Stanford University found that individuals with particularly vivid imaginations often show increased neural connectivity between these sensory regions, allowing for richer mental experiences. This explains why some people can almost taste the salt water when imagining the ocean, or feel the texture of silk without touching anything at all. A gentle magic performed by nothing more than thought itself, carried on the quiet current of consciousness as you rest. Fact 10. The imagination shares a mysterious companionship with memory, but it is not bound to accuracy. In fact, studies have found that the brain activates similar regions when recalling an event and when fabricating a completely new imagined situation. The angular gyrus, a region nestled near the back of the brain, plays a role in blending facts with fiction, allowing imagined memories to drift into the realm of emotional truth. This is why a memory of a rainstorm from childhood might grow into something far more magical over time, with golden leaves swirling in slow motion and thunder echoing like a symphony. It isn't deception, but a kind of gentle embroidery where the mind quietly stitches feeling into fact. This blending of memory and imagination creates mental tapestries far more vivid than the raw event itself. Neuroscience research at Northwestern University has shown that each time we recall a memory, we subtly reconstruct it, incorporating new elements and emotions that weren't present in the original experience. In the quiet moments before sleep, these softened memories reshape into dreamscapes made just for you, where truth and imagination dance together in twilight, creating personal mythologies that comfort and inspire even as consciousness begins to fade. The hippocampus, traditionally seen as the keeper of memories, works alongside the prefrontal cortex to weave these embellished recollections, creating stories that serve emotional needs rather than historical accuracy. A collaboration that transforms ordinary moments into extraordinary inner landscapes. Fact 11. The boundaries between imagination and empathy are deeply entwined. When you imagine the experience of another person, your brain engages in a quiet simulation powered by a network that includes the temporoparietal junction and the medial prefrontal cortex. These regions, often associated with perspective taking, create a soft inner echo of someone else's reality, allowing you to feel what they've felt, even across distance or time. This phenomenon, sometimes described as mentalizing, is your mind's gift of emotional imagination, projecting you into lives you've never lived. You might picture the joy behind a stranger's smile or the weight behind unshed tears. And in doing so, you build invisible bridges between minds. Psychologists believe this faculty of imaginative empathy has played a vital role in the evolution of human cooperation, allowing communities to grow not just through logic, but through shared stories and inward understanding. Neuroimaging studies from UCLA have revealed that when we engage in this empathic imagination, our brains create neural patterns that mirror those of the person we're thinking about, creating a biological foundation for connection. Even now, as you lie still under the hush of night, your brain carries the quiet power to glimpse another's dreams, gently painting them into the spacious interior of your own inner world, as if catching starlight reflections from someone else's sea. Fact 12. Children often display the purest form of imagination, unbound by structure or skepticism. By age 4, the average human brain has already generated tens of thousands of unique mental images, from invisible friends to talking animals and entire imaginary cities with their own rules and weather. These creations are not just games, but vital cognitive rehearsals that help the developing mind practice empathy, logic, and creativity. The prefrontal cortex, still forming during these early years, allows this freedom to bend reality, to see a simple cardboard box as a spaceship, a fragment of cloud as a galloping horse. Researchers at Harvard have found that children who frequently engage in imaginative play score higher on measures of problem solving and emotional regulation later in life. This early imaginative fluency is like a mental muscle, flexed through pretend scenarios and whispered stories, growing strong in the playground of thought. And though we grow, a deep part of that sandbox world remains, tucked quietly within the folds of memory, waiting to reawaken in moments of wonder or just before sleep, when the mind turns inward and the child within wanders once more beneath skies only they can see. Fact 13. Music and imagination share a delicate neural harmony. When you hear a melody in your mind, Even if no notes are playing aloud, your auditory cortex activates as though the air itself is vibrating with sound. This internal symphony, a remembered lullaby, a song yet to be written, or a tune imagined in perfect silence, recruits not only auditory areas, but also emotional centers like the insula and the amygdala. These regions blend to create feeling, tone, and depth, like colors mixed on a painter's palette of mood. In this way, imagined music has the power to move us, to slow our heart rate, to summon tears or memory through vibrations that remain entirely silent. A study at Dartmouth College revealed that the brain fills in gaps during musical recall, predicting missing notes with striking precision, evidence of an internal composer constantly at work behind the veil of thought. So when the world is hushed and the stars rest above, your imagination may softly play music known only to you. Each note, a gentle rung on the ladder to dreams, echoing quietly in the space between waking and sleep. An inaudible lullaby composed by your mind's quiet, moonlight orchestra. Neuroimaging research has shown that musicians and non-musicians alike activate similar neural pathways when merely imagining beloved songs, suggesting this musical imagination is a universal human gift. Scientists have observed that these imagined melodies can even trigger the release of dopamine, creating a sense of pleasure and comfort that gently guides the mind toward restful states, transforming the simple act of thought into a personal concert hall where only you hold the ticket. A private symphony conducted by memory and emotion alike. Fact 14. The brain's imaginative capacity extends across the senses, but also across time and space, allowing us to conceptualize places and periods we've never personally witnessed. You can imagine the rings of Saturn or the scent of rain in an ancient forest long vanished from the earth. This form of abstract imagination, sometimes called constructive simulation, taps into neural systems that include the lateral temporal cortex and inferior parietal lobule, assembling fragments of learned knowledge and sensory echoes into coherent mental tapestries. Even with limited data, the brain fills in gaps like a gentle narrator finishing a half-told tale, creating an illusion of completeness where only fragments exist. Researchers at the University of Cambridge found that this ability to simulate unknown environments involves a complex interplay between the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, collaborating to extrapolate beyond direct experience. Scientists posit that this ability is a fundamental part of our evolutionary toolkit, making it possible to plan ahead, dream beyond current limits, and empathize with distant realities. Anthropological studies suggest this cognitive flexibility gave early humans a survival advantage, allowing them to predict seasonal changes and imagine solutions to challenges not yet encountered. As you lie still beneath your own quiet sky, this deep imagination stirs softly within you, inviting you to drift across invisible borders into realms untouched by time, to wander gently over forgotten landscapes under imagined stars, where every moment is made anew by your silent, dreaming mind. Fact 15. Even the simple act of reading a fictional story activates imagination in ways that echo deep neural resonance. When you read about a character tasting honey, regions of your brain responsible for taste perception light up faintly, as though a drop of sweetness touched your own tongue. Descriptions of movement stir the motor cortex, and scenes of warmth may softly awaken the somatosensory system. Neuroscientists call this phenomenon embodied simulation, where the imagined becomes gently somatic, blending thought and sensation into a hushed form of empathy. In a 2011 study from Emory University, researchers found that literary passages rich with metaphor and sensory language consistently triggered heightened brain activity beyond simple comprehension. This neural mirroring allows you to experience textures never felt, places never visited, emotions never personally lived, all through the quiet alchemy of words. When reading about a character walking through autumn leaves, your brain creates a subtle simulation including the crisp sound, the visual palette of amber and crimson, and even the gentle resistance beneath imagined footsteps. Through this process, the words on a page become more than symbols. They bloom into sensory echoes, woven silently into the folds of your awareness. As your eyes pass over lush descriptions and unfolding narratives, you are not merely following a tale, but participating in it. Mind wrapped quietly around characters and places born not of fact, but of feeling. In this way, your imagination becomes the stage, the actors, the music, and the light, all softly offered to the night as you drift farther into sleep with each whispered phrase. Fact 16. Dreams and imagination share a neural playground, yet they dance to slightly different rhythms. While dreams emerge largely untethered during REM sleep, the imagination can be directed, shaped, and steered like a paper boat on the currents of conscious thought. Still, the two overlap in striking ways. Both rely heavily on the brain's default mode network, which hums quietly in the background, linking memories, desires, and sensory fragments into soft mental impressions. In dreams, this network works without oversight, weaving symbols and sensations freely, while the deliberate imagination can gently guide the same materials into stories, solutions, or soothing reveries. Researchers at the University of Montreal found that people who vividly imagine scenarios while awake tend to recall more elaborate dreams, suggesting a shared capacity for inner storytelling. The thalamus acts as a gateway in both states, though it functions differently in each, filtering external stimuli during wakefulness while becoming more permissive during dreams. Neuroimaging studies show that the anterior prefrontal cortex, responsible for metacognition, remains active during intentional imagination, but dims during dreaming, explaining why dreams often feel real until we wake. This relationship suggests that our dreaming and imagining minds are like fraternal twins, born of the same neural systems, but expressing themselves through different states of consciousness. So tonight, as you gently close your eyes and drift into rest, know that the day's final thoughts are not lost, but handed forward to that quiet, nocturnal artist within you, who will take your imagination's brush and paint stories on the untouched canvas of your sleeping mind. Fact 17. Without imagination, time would feel more rigid and linear, but with it, the mind can bend hours into moments and years into single, shimmering thoughts. This temporal flexibility is made possible by the brain's ability to construct and reassemble mental timelines. When we recall a summer evening from childhood or picture an event decades into the future, the medial temporal lobe activates, stitching together episodes across time like beads on a thread. Psychologists call this chronesthesia, the mental sense of time travel, a function unique to humans. It allows you to leap from the present to memories, dreams, or hypothetical futures with no effort at all, like skipping stones across the still lake of awareness. In a 2007 study conducted at the University of Toronto, researchers discovered that patients with damage to the hippocampus could neither recall the past nor envision coherent future scenarios, suggesting that memory and foresight are twin capabilities born from the same inner spark. Neuroscientists have further observed that this mental time travel activates the posterior cingulate cortex, creating what they call temporal self-projection, a bridge connecting what was with what might be. This capacity allows us to mentally rehearse scenarios before they happen, revisit moments long past, or create entirely fictional timelines where history took different turns. As you rest now, wrapped in the stillness of night, your imagination continues this quiet skipping forward and back, gently bending time into a soft circle, where everything you've ever been and everything you one day might be can meet under the same imagined stars. Fact 18. The imaginative mind can bring us solace during pain, not by denying discomfort, but by reframing it through gently constructed meaning. When people visualize calming scenes, such as a quiet meadow or the ebbing tide of a shoreline, functional MRI studies have shown decreased activity in the brain's pain centers, including the anterior cingulate cortex. This meditative visualization, often practiced in mindfulness or guided imagery therapy, has been found to reduce the subjective experience of pain by up to 50% in certain clinical trials. It is as though the mind, handed a paintbrush of possibility, chooses to soften the edges of suffering, layering hues of serenity atop harsher truths. A 2018 study at Stanford University revealed that participants imagining themselves in peaceful scenarios while undergoing painful stimuli reported significantly lower discomfort, with neural pathways between the prefrontal cortex and amygdala showing enhanced connectivity. This gentle cognitive reorientation shows that imagination does more than distract, it transforms. In these internal havens, the wind becomes a kind murmur, and time slows to a reverent whisper. Researchers at Johns Hopkins found that patients with chronic pain who regularly practiced guided imagery demonstrated measurable changes in both pain perception and inflammatory markers, suggesting that imagination can influence not only how we feel pain, but potentially its physiological expression. It is here, just before sleep, that your imagination might cradle you with its quiet strength, conjuring shelter, not from the world, but within it, a soft interior architecture of peace built only by thought, by will, and by wonder. Fact 19. Imagining motion in stillness can subtly recalibrate perception itself. When people picture the turn of a wheel, the drift of clouds, or the spiral of a galaxy slowly unwinding, the visual cortex responds in ways nearly identical to actual movement recognition. This phenomenon, known as motion imagery, taps into the brain's visual and vestibular systems, creating a sense of dynamic flow even when the body remains perfectly still. Researchers at the University of Glasgow found that imagined motion can cause slight shifts in spatial awareness and balance, quietly persuading the brain that something unseen is in motion. This delicate simulation allows the mind to trace invisible constellations across the night sky, follow phantom dancers through darkness, or feel the gentle pull of planetary orbits from billions of miles away. Brain imaging studies reveal that the middle temporal visual area, a region specialized for detecting actual movement, activates during these imagined journeys, creating what neuroscientists call a visual kinesthetic experience. Studies with Olympic athletes show that those who regularly practice motion imagery strengthen neural pathways between imagination and physical performance, improving coordination without lifting a finger. Such imagined movement brings quiet rhythm to thought, a sense of unfolding and return, like waves lapping endlessly against the shores of consciousness. As you relax now, in the perfect stillness of your bed, your mind may continue spinning unseen galaxies, each one a silent wheel guiding your breath towards sleep, a gentle drift through the gravity of imagination alone, where stillness and motion become indistinguishable companions on the path to dreams. Fact 20. When you imagine a smell, such as the aroma of warm bread or the drift of sea air, your brain activates the piriform cortex, the same area responsible for detecting scents in the real world. This phenomenon, known as olfactory imagery, demonstrates how vividly the mind can recreate experience from memory and meaning alone. Unlike vision or hearing, the sense of smell links directly to the limbic system, especially the amygdala and hippocampus, which play central roles in emotion and memory. This close connection explains why imagined scents often stir powerful feelings or summon forgotten scenes with sudden clarity. A faint recollection of lavender may conjure a summer afternoon, or the imagined whiff of old books could return you to a childhood library, rustling with pages and wonder. Research from the University of Geneva found that those with stronger olfactory imagination responded more emotionally to imagined scenes, suggesting that the ability to summon scent from silence enriches inner worlds with texture and nostalgia. Neurobiologists have observed that this mental recreation of scents can even trigger the release of the same neurochemicals associated with actual olfactory perception, creating authentic emotional responses to purely imagined fragrances. Some people experience this olfactory imagination so vividly that they report physical reactions identical to those caused by real odors, from the comforting warmth of imagined cinnamon to the refreshing clarity of mentally conjured pine forests. As night deepens, your mind may softly call up the fragrance of imagined places, each scent like a lantern along the path to sleep, warming and guiding you inward into the gardens of your own still memory. Fact 21. The power of imagination extends beyond crafting fiction or dreaming futures. It also performs a quiet role in memory repair. When individuals revisit painful memories through guided imagery, they can reframe the emotional tone of those experiences, softening distress and nurturing healing. This process, known as memory reconsolidation, has been extensively studied at NYU's Center for Neuroscience, where researchers have shown that recalling a memory while in a calm, safe mental state allows the brain to partially overwrite its emotional signature. During this delicate revision, the amygdala quiets while the prefrontal cortex assumes greater influence, gently guiding the remembered scene toward feelings of safety or closure. This does not erase what happened, but rather reinterprets it through a more compassionate lens, allowing personal narratives to evolve in ways that support emotional balance. Mental health practitioners have utilized imaginative techniques for trauma recovery for decades, inviting the mind to revisit distressing events with new tools for understanding, like opening a once-locked diary in gentle sunlight. In the moments before sleep, this quiet reimagining often occurs naturally through dreams or half-conscious thoughts, offering the psyche nightly opportunities to weave threads of peace into even the most tangled memories. Neuroimaging studies have revealed that this therapeutic imagination activates connections between the hippocampus and ventromedial prefrontal cortex, creating neural pathways that bridge between emotional processing and cognitive reappraisal. As you rest tonight, the stories your mind revisits may arrive bathed in new light, softly rewritten by the tenderness of your own imaginative grace. Each memory a landscape gently reshaped by the quiet waters of consciousness flowing toward sleep. Fact 22. The imaginative mind often speaks in symbols, using metaphor and archetype as its native tongue. Carl Jung believed that dreams and fantasies revealed the shared architecture of human imagination, shaped by thousands of years of stories repeated across time. These inner emblems, like the wise elder, the deep well, the endless forest, are not just literary devices, but reflections of collective patterns, endlessly re-emerging through the mind's creative expression. Neuroscientific studies from the University of Zurich have supported the idea that certain symbolic forms, when visualized or dreamed, activate consistent neural patterns across diverse individuals, suggesting a shared psychological language encoded deep within us. These symbols function like ancient keys, unlocking emotion and meaning, allowing the soul to express its truths in imagery rather than speech. A tower rising through storm clouds, a luminous path through mist, a circle drawn in sand. These are not merely scenes, but messages the subconscious sends wrapped in the poetry of the mind. In this symbolic language, the hippocampus and right temporal lobe work together to link abstract concepts with emotional significance, creating what researchers call embodied metaphors that carry meaning through form rather than definition. Research at Princeton has shown that when people encounter powerful symbolic imagery, their brains process it simultaneously in both literal and metaphorical ways, creating layered understanding that transcends simple interpretation. As you prepare to sleep, let these quiet inner symbols emerge without effort or interpretation, like petals unfolding under moonlight, each one a whisper from a deeper layer of your dreaming self, gently guiding you into the sacred wandering of night. Fact 23. The structure of imagined spaces in the mind often mirrors real architectural logic, a phenomenon sometimes called cognitive spatial mapping. Even in dreams, the imagined rooms we wander through typically follow coherent layouts with walls, thresholds, and open vistas, suggesting the brain preserves order even within fantasy. This internal cartography relies on the hippocampus and entorhinal cortex, regions specialized for navigating real-world geography. Studies at University College London have revealed that the same neural grids used for physical orientation activate when people imagine unfamiliar spaces. Despite never having touched the stones of a daydreamed castle or walked the path through an imagined forest, the brain lays down a map of those places as though preparing to explore them. Some dreams feature impossible architectures, staircases without end, floating halls, or doorways that open into memory itself. Yet these structures still feel navigable because of this underlying mental scaffolding. Virtual reality researchers have begun studying these mechanisms to design more intuitive digital environments, drawing inspiration from how the brain naturally constructs spatial awareness. Neuroscientists at Stanford University discovered that specialized cells called place cells fire, not only when navigating physical environments, but also when mentally simulating movement through imagined spaces. As you drift toward the edge of sleep, the rooms your mind builds may unfold like storybooks, one behind the next, filled with corridors and chambers shaped not by logic, but by longing, memory, and wonder. These interiors of thought offer sanctuary, quiet enclaves of imagination in which you may rest without direction, carried gently through hallways only your dreaming mind can find. Fact 24. Imagination peaks during moments of gentle boredom, when the mind is unoccupied by external demands and free to roam. Psychologists call this default thinking, a state where undirected attention gives rise to spontaneous creativity and insight. In these unstructured interludes, perhaps while staring out a rain-speckled window or lying still in the quiet dark, the brain begins to meander, revisiting memories, inventing stories, building novel ideas from fragments of thought. Functional MRI scans show that the brain's default mode network becomes highly active during these restful states, coordinating with the hippocampus and midline cortices to allow unprompted imaginative flow. A 2013 study from the University of Southern California found that subjects who engaged in low-effort tasks, like walking or showering, performed better on originality tests afterwards, suggesting that daydreaming nurtures creative problem-solving. This mental wandering is not aimless, but rather the mind's way of kindling an inner fireplace where thoughts gather and deepen. Neuroscientists at Harvard discovered that during these quiet moments, connectivity between typically separate brain regions increases dramatically, creating neural bridges that facilitate unexpected associations and novel insights. This explains why solutions to complex problems often arrive when we stop actively seeking them, appearing instead during moments of relaxation when the conscious mind loosens its grip. In the drowsy stillness before sleep, this state of gentle boredom becomes particularly potent as the barriers between conscious and unconscious thought grow permeable, allowing half-formed ideas and forgotten memories to drift into awareness like stars appearing in twilight. As night wraps you in calm and the world fades from reach, this quiet boredom becomes sacred, an invitation to imagine not with urgency, but with grace. In stillness, your thoughts stretch their wings, gliding like birds into the dusk-colored unknown, and there, beneath the hush of your breath, blooms an entire universe only your restful mind can draw. Fact 25. Imagination influences how we experience time, not only mentally, but physically. When deeply immersed in a daydream or imagined scenario, the brain's internal timekeepers, governed by the insular cortex and basal ganglia, adjust their rhythm, creating the sensation that time is stretching or compressing around you. This temporal distortion often brings pleasure and connects closely with flow states, those expansive moments where concentration and imagination blend into a seamless experience. Researchers at the University of Minnesota found that participants engaged in imaginative tasks while isolated from external time cues perceived their sessions as significantly shorter or longer than actual duration, varying based on emotional intensity and cognitive absorption. This phenomenon explains why imagined experiences, whether reliving a cherished memory or envisioning future possibilities, frequently feel more textured and substantial than ordinary moments passing by. Neurological studies using EEG monitoring have recorded decreased beta wave activity alongside increased theta waves during such imaginative states, creating patterns remarkably similar to those observed during meditation and early sleep phases. In these quiet intervals, as external stimuli fade and your inner world expands, the boundaries between self and time dissolve into one another. Like a single droplet falling into still waters, an imagined moment can ripple through an eternity of feeling, each expanding circle guiding you deeper into restfulness. As your breathing slows and thoughts begin drifting freely, time may temporarily forget its measured pace, gently curving around the narratives you silently create. Stories that unfold not according to clocks, but following the natural cadence of your dreaming consciousness. Fact 26. The imaginative mind can project not only across time and space, but also into entirely alternate identities, allowing you to momentarily become someone or something else. This phenomenon, known in psychological circles as narrative transportation, occurs when we become so immersed in a character or story that we temporarily adopt their thoughts, emotions, and even their worldview. During these mental excursions, the brain recruits areas tied to self-processing, such as the medial prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction, as if reconfiguring the interior mirror to reflect a different set of eyes. Neuroscientists from the University of Oregon conducted studies indicating that subjects who strongly identified with fictional characters during storytelling showed neural patterns mirroring the emotional states of those characters, suggesting a complete, though temporary, mental impersonation. This explains why imagining the heroic journey of an explorer or the inner silence of a tree can evoke emotions that feel deeply personal, even though they are not our own. Researchers have discovered that this imaginative identification activates mirror neurons, creating physiological responses that simulate the imagined experience as if it were happening to us directly. This ability to inhabit another being without moving or speaking is imagination's quiet masquerade, a gentle costume party of thought where the soul wears borrowed shoes to walk paths it has never tread. As your thoughts loosen and swirl tonight, they may take flight into such borrowed forms, becoming an animal in twilight forests or a lantern drifting over still waters. Each transformation, a lullaby humming from within, softening the edges of self until only awareness remains, resting quietly inside the gentle dream of becoming anything at all. Fact 27. Even the act of imagining light can influence the brain's emotional tone, casting warm or cool hues across thought without a single photon touching the eye. When you picture sunlight filtering through leaves, soft candlelight flickering in a quiet room, or the blue glow of twilight over a slow-moving lake, your visual cortex activates as though responding to real light sources. But light in the mind is also tied to mood regulation. Studies from the University of British Columbia have shown that imagined brightness correlates with increased activity in the brain's serotonin systems, elevating gentle feelings of peace and calm. These imagined illuminations are more than visuals. They are internal atmospheres, shaping not only what you see, but how you feel. The prefrontal cortex and limbic areas dance together in this light-painted reverie, creating internal landscapes bathed in subtle emotion. Just as natural light changes throughout the day, your inner light blooms in shifting tones, from the golden hue of hope to the lavender softness of longing. This luminous imagery is used in therapeutic visualization techniques, helping individuals anchor resilience and meaning through symbolic settings of light. Neuroimaging research has revealed that when people imagine radiant scenes, their amygdala shows reduced activity, suggesting that these mental illuminations can soothe anxiety much like actual sunlight. For those who practice meditation, visualizing light moving through the body has been shown to lower cortisol levels and reduce physiological stress markers, creating a biological response to purely imagined radiance. As you rest now, let your thoughts gently illuminate imagined scenes, perhaps a hallway of lanterns flickering in the wind or constellations painted across a midnight ceiling. Each imagined glow becomes a guidepost through the shadows of thought, softly brightening the path through night's quiet passage, leading you tenderly toward dreams braided in starlight. Fact 28. The imagination does not require color to bloom, as even monochrome mental images hold extraordinary emotional richness. When people imagine in black and white, the brain activates complex visual and emotional circuits, proving that hue is not a prerequisite for beauty in the theater of the mind. Researchers at the University of Oslo discovered that individuals born before the widespread use of color television often default to grayscale imagery when daydreaming, yet report the same depth of emotion and clarity as those imagining in full color. This suggests that the mind's aesthetic sense transcends visual accuracy, relying instead on form, memory, and feeling to create its inner art. Studies using visual, evoked potentials have shown that brain responses to imagined shapes and shades mirror those to actual visual stimuli, even when color is absent. This inner grayscale vision resembles the early stages of dreaming, where scenes may begin as vague outlines or shadows before filling with detail, guided by emotion rather than chromatic precision. Artists and poets often describe these moments as the quiet charcoal sketches of thought, where ideas take shape in soft contrasts before bursting into full concept. Neuropsychologists at Cambridge University found that the parastriatal cortex, responsible for processing visual elements like texture and contour, remains highly active during monochrome imagination, creating richly detailed mental scenes despite the absence of color information. In moments of deep relaxation, when external stimuli fade, these grayscale imaginings can feel more intimate and profound, as if the mind is communing with the essential forms of things rather than their surface appearances. As you rest beneath the weightless hush of night, your mind may wander through these shadowed corridors, where everything glows faintly like moonlight on paper, a world drawn in the subtleties of contrast and grace, proving that even without color, imagination still paints marvels across the canvases of your quiet thoughts. Fact 29. The limits of imagination are not defined by information, but by curiosity. It expands not from data, but from wonder. When you encounter something unknown, even a whisper of mystery, the imagination leans forward to fill in the silence. Cognitive scientists refer to this inclination as predictive coding, the brain's quiet habit of forecasting what lies beyond the scene. This predictive model doesn't rely solely on logic. Instead, it feeds on emotion, experience, and possibility, crafting inner visions that reach past current knowledge into what might be. A study from the Max Planck Institute showed that individuals asked to imagine parts of an artifact they couldn't see still activated areas of the parietal lobe associated with mental modeling, effectively completing the unseen object with a blend of memory and intuition. Fiction writers and scientists alike depend on this feature of mind, conjuring entire ecosystems, futures, or theories from fragments and questions alone. It means that in those moments just before sleep, when the world slips into hush and clocks forget their ticking, you are still creating, imagining wings on forests, lifetimes in seconds, or meanings in every soft shadow. The brain, sculptor of unreal yet meaningful forms, continues its silent work, extending bridges not only across planets and timelines, but across wonder itself. Neuropsychologists at Yale University have documented how this imaginative completion activates the posterior cingulate cortex, creating what they term cognitive resonance, where the brain finds deep satisfaction in these acts of creative hypothesis. Their research shows that this process releases small amounts of dopamine, suggesting that imaginative wondering is intrinsically rewarding, perhaps explaining why we return to it again and again throughout life. As your breathing slows and night deepens, your imagination may reach quietly into that unknown dark, shaping gentle fictions with the hands of longing, curiosity, and awe. And in that reaching, you begin to dream. Fact 30. Imagination carries within it the quiet power to construct entire emotional landscapes from nothing more than memory's faint dust and the whisper of desire. When you recall a place you've never visited but have seen only in stories, or picture a future moment that has not yet been lived, your brain responds with real emotion, rooted in neural architecture that makes belief and possibility feel equally tangible. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, long associated with assigning value and emotional tone to experiences, becomes engaged when you imagine comforting or uplifting future events, even if they're completely fictional. In a study from the University of Colorado, participants who visualized themselves achieving a meaningful goal showed increased dopamine activity and a rise in parasympathetic nervous system responses indicative of relaxation. These imagined hopes make gentle ripples through your physiology, lowering heart rate, easing tension, and preparing the body for emotional restoration. Neuroscientists at Harvard Medical School discovered that the brain's response to visualization can trigger the release of endorphins and oxytocin, creating a cascade of biochemical changes that mirror those experienced during actual pleasant events. The imagined embrace of a loved one, the quiet joy of watching unseen stars from a mountaintop, or the feeling of finally arriving home, all of these carry therapeutic emotions into the folds of now, brought into form through thought alone. In psychology, this is sometimes called affective forecasting, and it reveals how the imagination doesn't simply play, it heals. Researchers have documented that regular positive visualization can strengthen neural pathways associated with resilience and emotional regulation, essentially training the brain to access comforting states more readily, even during challenging circumstances. As you settle now deeper into rest, perhaps some soft thread of the future glows faintly before you, a light in the quiet fog of dreams. And from this silent glow, your imagination draws breath, weaving soft stories yet to unfold, comforting the present with the warmth of what could be, even as you fall gently into sleep. Fact 31. The imagination is one of the only mental faculties that can operate entirely without input from the physical world. While our senses gather data about what is, imagination conjures what could be, using neither touch nor sight, but something even softer and more elusive. This independence allows imagined realities to function without rules, sometimes faster than light, deeper than sound, and larger than any known distance. cognitive neuroscientists from MIT found that the brain's creative cortex, particularly the anterior temporal lobe, activates vividly when imagining scenarios disconnected from immediate reality, suggesting that our most fantastical ideas stem from areas wired not for reason, but for transcendence. In one experiment, participants who imagined entirely novel tools or landscapes showed bursts of gamma wave activity, a neural pattern often linked to insight and artistic inspiration. These inner inventions aren't constrained by the laws that govern our waking hours. In imagined worlds, gravity can bend, calendars can blur, and the whisper of an unseen melody can carry across endless dreamscapes unbroken. These pockets of radiant nothing matter deeply, for they offer the mind freedom from form, refuge from the ordinary, and a reminder that creation requires no canvas, but the inner sky. Artists have long reported that their most profound visions often arrive when the senses are quieted and solitude opens the door to inner expanses. Neuroimaging studies have revealed that during deep imaginative states, the brain's default mode network communicates more freely with sensory processing regions, creating a neural symphony that transcends typical cognitive boundaries. As your body stills and your breathing slows, this self-contained light may bloom gently within, illuminating hidden cathedrals of thought, vast and wordless, stirring softly behind closed eyes until all you know, all you remember, all you hope to become gathers quietly as one. The silence from which everything imagined begins. Fact 32. The brain's capacity to imagine does not fade with age. It often deepens. While certain cognitive functions may slow as we grow older, research from the University of California, Berkeley has shown that imaginative abilities, especially those tied to emotional insight and reflective creativity, remain robust and even flourish over time. Older adults often report more vivid inner imagery and a greater ability to emotionally inhabit scenarios, drawing from their expanded reservoirs of life experience. This phenomenon, known as crystallized imagination, suggests that maturity brings a greater depth to mental storytelling, coloring imagined moments with richer meaning and subtler shades of feeling. Functional imaging studies reveal that older brains activate a broader network during visualization tasks, combining memory, perspective, and moral reasoning into more complex imaginative scenes. It is as though years of living have textured the imagination with a gentle grain, like soft film, capturing not just detail, but resonance. Neural connections formed over decades create rich associative networks, allowing for more nuanced emotional landscapes within imagined scenarios. Research from the Max Planck Institute indicates that while processing speed may decrease, the quality of imaginative thinking often increases, becoming more multi-layered and emotionally sophisticated. Neuroimaging studies show increased connectivity between frontal and temporal regions in older adults during creative visualization, suggesting a more integrated approach to imagination that draws upon wisdom acquired through lived experience. This later life flourishing of inward vision may explain why some of the most profound works of art, literature, and music emerge in seasons long after youth. As sleep draws near and the world quiets once again, the mind, regardless of age, continues its timeless voyage inward. Sailing memories echo, dreams shimmer, and the silent spun cloth of wonders still to be dreamt, quietly reminding us that imagination is ageless, forever blooming in the deepest gardens of rest. Fact 33. Imagination follows rhythm, not only of thought, but of breath, of heartbeat, of the swinging pendulum of inner time. When you engage in slow, rhythmic visualization, such as picturing waves breaking gently on a shore with each inhale and retreating with each exhale, the brain aligns its oscillations with your breathing, creating a calming synchrony across neural networks. Studies from the University of Pisa have revealed that the act of imagining rhythmic patterns while breathing slowly decreases activity in the default mode network's more restless circuits and enhances communication between the insula and prefrontal cortex, assisting emotional regulation. This fusion of rhythm and imagery has been used in ancient meditation practices and modern sleep therapies alike, sculpting a mental cadence that soothes the nervous system. Clinical trials show that combining paced breathing with visual imagination can reduce cortisol levels, slow heart rate, and activate the vagus nerve, a key corridor of calm in the body. When the mind imagines patterns that flow like the breath, flocks moving across a misted sky, lanterns bobbing in rhythm on a quiet river, stars pulsing faintly in tune with a dreaming heartbeat, the whole system bathes in soft coherence. Neuroimaging research at Stanford University has demonstrated that this synchronization between imagined scenes and physiological rhythms creates what scientists call a state of psychophysiological resonance, where mental and bodily processes harmonize to promote deeper states of relaxation. In these harmonized moments, thought and biology blend, creating a lullaby that comes not from outside, but from the elegant repetition nestled in the breath itself. As your breathing evens now, imagination may follow its rhythm like a boat follows the tide, and with each quiet cycle inward, you are drawn one measure closer to the boundless calm beneath sleep's waiting sea. Fact 34. As night deepens, so too does the mind's ability to blur the divisions between outer reality and inner creation, a gentle twilight where the edges soften. In this in-between, imagination becomes not just a mental faculty, but a sensory expansion, a soft bridge between what is and what could be. Studies from the University of Copenhagen have shown that in moments of hypnagogia, the transitional state between wakefulness and sleep, the brain releases a cascade of overlapping imagery, emotion, and sensation, often leading to sudden insights, poetic visuals, or scenes that seem to hold secret meanings. This threshold state is marked by alpha and theta brain waves, the same frequencies associated with deep relaxation and meditative awareness. Salvador Dali and Thomas Edison famously cultivated this brief mental place, using micro naps to capture the inner flashes that appear just before surrendering to sleep. Neuroscientists now believe that this threshold of consciousness may be one of the most fertile grounds for imagination, where logic releases its grip and the brain is free to recombine memory, intuition, and dream into entirely new forms. Research at the Max Planck Institute has documented increased connectivity between typically segregated brain networks during this hypnagogic state, allowing for unusual associations and novel perspectives to emerge spontaneously. In that hush before dreams take hold, the mind creates with a freedom found nowhere else in the waking world. You may find yourself unfolding across time, flowing through places untouched by reason, gently turning into mist, wind, or star. This is imagination's sanctuary, the inner tide pulling gently outward toward what waits beneath the sleep-bound sea. Neurologists have observed that these pre-sleep imaginings often incorporate elements of the day's experiences transformed through emotional filters, creating what researchers call effective processing of recent memories. As it leads you further now into the soft waters of night, may each thought drift into lightness, each image fade gently into stillness, and may your last waking breath carry you peacefully into dreams born from your own quiet consciousness. Fact 35. The imagination may seem ephemeral, yet it has measurable influence over the body's physical state, quietly sculpting responses through envisioned actions and emotions. This phenomenon, observed in numerous biofeedback studies, is known as ideomotor effect, the subtle responses the body makes to mere thoughts of movement or sensation. When someone imagines lifting their hand, electrodes detect minute muscle activations, invisible to the eye, but real to the body. In guided relaxation practices, imagining tension melting from the limbs can actually lower muscular rigidity and reduce blood pressure, offering physiological echoes in response to imagined cues. Researchers at the Cleveland Clinic observed that participants who mentally rehearsed physical exercises over a period of weeks gained nearly half the strength benefit of those performing the exercises physically, despite making no actual movement. This remarkable finding suggests that the mind's theater, if consistent and vivid enough, may coax the body into participating in quiet collaboration, responding not only to what is done, but to what is dreamed. Neuroscientists have discovered that these ideomotor responses involve the supplementary motor area and premotor cortex, regions that prepare movement before it happens, creating neural signals that sometimes travel to muscles even when the motion remains purely imagined. This connection hints at a broader truth, that your inner world is not sealed off from your biology, but intimately entwined with each mental brushstroke rippling gently into form. As you lie quietly now, you may feel the hush of imagined warmth spreading through your limbs, or sense a gentle upward drift as if floating just above the mattress. These sensations are not illusions, but your inner visions becoming softly somatic, creating a lull, not just for thoughts, but for the whole self, drawn slowly and sweetly toward that tranquil state where rest begins in the imagination and flows effortlessly into sleep. Fact 36. The brain's imaginative ability is so fluid that it can simultaneously hold multiple versions of reality, blending contradictions into coherence without conflict. This paradoxical harmony is supported by the brain's bilateral activation of both the logical left hemisphere and the creative right, forming a neural duet that balances fact with fiction. Psychologists at King's College London have called this capacity cognitive pluripotency, a form of mental elasticity that allows you to believe in opposites such as danger and safety, past and future, reality and dream, all within the same imagined scene. When you picture yourself standing at the edge of two roads, one leading into the stars and one into the roots of the earth, your mind does not pause to question the logic. It simply follows both at once, tracing meaning across mirrored paths. Functional MRI scans show increased connectivity between the corpus callosum and prefrontal cortex during such dual reality imaginings, indicating a high level of integration between reason and reverie. This mental capability underpins not only lucid dreaming and creative breakthroughs, but also the capacity for spiritual and philosophical thought, where multiple truths may coexist like reflections on still water. In these soft hours of night, you may feel this pluripotency emerge gently within you as you consider not what is more real, but what feels most resonant. Neuropsychological studies at Oxford University have revealed that this simultaneous holding of contradictions activates unique neural signatures distinct from either pure logic or pure fantasy, creating a cognitive space where innovation and insight often flourish. Researchers discovered that individuals with greater connectivity between typically opposing brain networks showed enhanced abilities to reconcile conflicting ideas and generate novel solutions to complex problems. To imagine is to welcome all possibilities with open mind and quiet heart, not aiming to settle the questions, but to hold their beauty close. As sleep approaches, your consciousness may naturally drift into this liminal space where boundaries dissolve, where your dreaming self walks many roads at once, beneath a sky large enough for every vision to breathe, every contradiction to dance, and every paradox to sing its gentle lullaby of possibility. Fact 37. The imagination can seed transformation, not only inwardly, but outwardly, quietly rewriting the possible through belief held tenderly until it shapes the real. This quiet alchemy is seen most clearly in the practice of mental rehearsal, a technique in which one vividly imagines themselves performing an action successfully before ever taking it. Olympic athletes, stage performers, and astronauts have all used this method to prepare minds and bodies for the extraordinary. Research at the University of Chicago found that students who mentally rehearsed piano sequences with no physical motion showed changes in motor cortex maps nearly identical to those who practiced on real keys. These findings echo across disciplines, revealing that the mind, when focused and emotionally invested, can begin to reconfigure neural pathways, changing patterns of thought, behavior, and even perception. Psychologists term this self-directed neuroplasticity, the ability to reshape brain circuits through imagination and intention. Studies from the University of Wisconsin have shown that guided imagery used in therapy not only improves emotional well-being, but can also reshape habitual fear responses, guiding people away from old pain into new strength. In this way, imagination becomes the architect of growth, building inward scaffolding not out of wood or steel, but from vision, hope, and the gentle discipline of dreaming on purpose. Neuroimaging research has revealed that consistent visualization practices create lasting structural changes in white matter tracts, connecting the visual cortex to motor planning regions, suggesting that imagined experience can physically rewire the brain over time. So as you lie still now, wrapped in stillness and breath, perhaps picture yourself a little freer, a little lighter, a little more whole. Let that image shimmer gently in the quiet, because though it begins as a dream, imagined often enough, it may softly begin to become true. And with that final breath, may your mind drift, not simply into unconsciousness, but into quiet, becoming, sleep's embrace, wrapped in all that you might yet be, patiently waiting in the hush beyond thought, where imagination and rest become one. Fact 38. In certain moments, the imagination becomes a mirror, not of the self, but of the universe itself, echoing the patterns and rhythms found in the stars, in tides, in the unfolding of petals and nebulae. Scientists refer to this phenomenon as fractal cognition, the mind's tendency to perceive and imagine recursive patterns that mirror natural structures. Researchers at MIT have discovered that when individuals engage in imaginative tasks involving patterns or recursive forms, their brains show activity in areas linked to mathematical reasoning, visual processing, and emotional empathy, suggesting that pattern recognition and imagination is not only intellectual, but also deeply felt. These imagined spirals, branching trees, nested dreams within dreams, each mirror the fractal designs encoded throughout nature, from the veins of a leaf to the swirl of a galaxy. Mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot once said that clouds are not spheres and mountains are not cones, and yet the mind can paint them vividly nonetheless, catching in its inner vision the chaotic order of the cosmos. Neuroaesthetic research indicates that exposure to fractal imagery, even imagined, can reduce stress and induce meditative states as the brain responds to these self-similar patterns with a sense of harmony. In the stillness of your own thoughts, you might see a branching forest of recollection, or slowly turning spiral of dreams, infinite in softness, unfolding inwards and outwards at once. Neuroimaging studies from Cambridge University have shown that when people visualize fractal patterns, their brains exhibit synchronized alpha wave activity across both hemispheres, creating what researchers call a state of coherent integration. As night envelops you now and the final ripples of wakefulness recede, your imagination continues its quietly interwoven dance with the great design of things, spinning constellations of thought through a universe both vast and intimate, until the only thing left is the gentle symmetry of breath and rest, spiraling endlessly into sleep. Fact 39. Imagination, at its deepest, becomes a kind of remembering, not of what has happened, but of something more ancient, timeless, and unspoken. Philosophers have long suggested that creative visions might emerge from a collective unconscious, a deep reservoir shared across generations and dreams. Carl Jung referred to this ethereal wellspring as the archetypal domain, where myths are born and symbols return with familiar faces in unfamiliar forms. Modern neuroscience has begun to glimpse echoes of this idea in the shared neural patterns that arise when people imagine similar universal themes: flight, water, the cosmos, the mother's touch. A study at the University of Vienna found remarkable similarities in brain activation among individuals envisioning archetypal imagery, especially within the limbic system and posterior cingulate cortex, regions tied to emotion and meaning-making. These findings suggest that beneath the individuality of dreams lies a quiet web of common feeling, a tapestry woven between minds across time. It may be why the same stories comfort us, the same rhythms lull us, the same shapes reappear in the architecture of temples and tales. Neuroimaging research from UCLA has revealed that when people visualize primordial scenes like flowing water or protective shelters, their brains activate in patterns that transcend cultural backgrounds, suggesting these images speak to something fundamentally human within us all. As your breath becomes softer now, and the boundary between self and sleep dissolves into gentle forgetting, your imagination may descend into this shared inner sea, where symbols drift like ancient whales, and stories older than memory hum softly beneath the surface. There, in that ocean of dream stuff, may you find not only peace, but the echo of countless souls dreaming with you, through you, and into the great quiet that awaits just beyond the shores of night. Fact 40. As the final thought drifts softly through the quiet corridors of your resting mind, it brings with it the most tender truth of all. Imagination is both seed and sky, the silent source from which dreams arise and the wide expanse into which they fly. Though intangible, it forms the architecture of inner worlds, where wonder weaves its gentle gold through every memory and hope. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University have called imagination the cognitive canvas, a limitless interior space where present, past, and possibility coexist in quiet harmony. In the gentle dark, it becomes your sanctuary, your compass, your lullaby, whether it constructs distant planets or replays a loved one's soft laughter. It cradles you with unseen arms, painting warmth into the silence. Neurobiology tells us that even in deepest sleep, the imagination stirs beneath the surface, still whispering, still weaving, still waiting. And so, dear listener, with breath slowed and the world hushed around you, let this final fact settle lightly in your heart. You are a maker of worlds, a thinker of stars, a dreamer for whom rest is not an end, but a soft beginning. Now close your eyes and let the gentle tide of wonder carry you, slow and luminous, into that boundless night where every imagined thing becomes real, and sleep waits just beyond the next quiet breath. Fact 41. The imagination is a lantern in the fog of uncertainty, lighting the way through the unknown with quiet courage and radiant possibility. In moments of doubt or transition, the mind instinctively calls upon imagery and inner stories to navigate forward, constructing symbolic maps from fragments of memory, emotion, and hope. Psychologists refer to this inner resource as generative imagination, the faculty that develops adaptive narratives during periods of change or adversity. A study at Columbia University demonstrated that individuals who construct vivid, positive mental imagery during uncertain times exhibit stronger problem-solving skills and lower anxiety, evidence that the brain leans instinctively toward creation in the face of ambiguity. The prefrontal cortex, hippocampus, and anterior cingulate all engage in this storytelling effort, collaborating like lantern bearers in the corridor of possibility. From imagining how a conversation may unfold, to picturing recovery after heartache, to seeing paths through unsolved riddles, the imagination provides a gentle scaffolding upon which new futures may quietly settle. Cultural anthropologists have found this tendency across all human societies, where myths and parables often emerge from collective challenges driven by the inner vision of minds seeking clarity and comfort. Neuroimaging research from Stanford University has revealed that during periods of uncertainty, the brain's default mode network becomes more closely connected with regions responsible for autobiographical planning, creating what scientists call perspective thinking pathways. These neural bridges allow us to mentally rehearse potential futures with emotional texture and narrative coherence, easing the anxiety of the unknown through the gentle alchemy of vision. Even now, as you ease into rest, if you find yourself wrapped in questions or standing at some unseen threshold, remember that your imagination has already begun stitching lanterns of light, swinging gently in the dark, inviting you not only to see, but to dream your way through the unknown. And with that lamp aglow and breath contented, may sleep enfold you gently as your mind continues its luminous sailing through the harbors of wonder, where answers are not always needed, and beauty begins with the courage to imagine. Fact 42. In the hush of sleep's approach, imagination plays its final note like a soft bell echoing across a dream-dark field, reminding us that wonder is patient and rest is sacred. Each imagined moment, whether vast as a galaxy or delicate as a petal's edge, has led us inward, toward this place of calm. Neuroscientists from the University of Edinburgh have noted that in the final stages of wakefulness, brain activity shifts toward low-frequency delta waves, a signature of surrender, where imagination slips softly into the vestibule of dreams. Here, the boundary fades completely, and all that was imagined becomes lived within sleep's quiet theater. There is nothing further you need to hold or seek. The stories have folded themselves like wings at rest. Let them go now, floating like lanterns beneath your closing eyes. Let the breath become slower, the silence deeper, and the night more tender. You have wandered through infinite gardens of thought, sky-lit riverways of memory, and soft meadows of possibility. Now the last field awaits, still and silver, where the mind no longer imagines, but simply is. Research from the Sleep Medicine Center at Harvard University reveals that these final moments of conscious imagination create a gentle neurological bridge into the deeper realms of sleep, guiding the transition from active thinking to restorative rest. The brain's imagination network gradually quiets as the hippocampus begins its nightly work of memory consolidation, transforming the day's experiences into permanent neural connections. As your awareness softens and thoughts become more distant, the autonomic nervous system shifts toward parasympathetic dominance, slowing your heartbeat and deepening your breath in perfect rhythm with your fading consciousness. May your sleep be whole, your dreaming kind, and may every imagined star remain close, quietly glowing in the sanctuary of your rest. Good night. Fact 43. As the journey closes, it's worth knowing that imagination does not truly end with thought, but continues like an underground river, flowing unseen beneath the conscious mind. Even in the deepest stages of sleep, during what neuroscientists classify as slow wave or NREM sleep, the brain exhibits spontaneous activity that resembles the earliest seeds of dreams, a quiet rehearsal space for the imagination to wander unseen. While REM sleep claims the vivid narratives, slow-wave dreaming paints in whispers, snippets of sound, glimmers of landscapes, soft echoes of feeling that drift through the sleeping mind. Research from the University of Wisconsin has shown that during these deepest phases, the thalamus and cortex still exchange rhythmic signals, creating a foundational hum that sustains the architecture of internal worlds. It is as though the dreaming brain keeps a lantern in a distant corridor of memory, glowing faintly to maintain the continuum between waking vision and nocturnal restoration. Neuropsychologists have discovered that this subterranean imagination serves crucial functions, helping the brain prioritize emotional memories, rehearse adaptive responses, and cultivate resilience while the conscious self lies still and silent. Sophisticated EEG monitoring has revealed that these slow-wave imaginings create unique brainwave patterns that strengthen neural pathways associated with emotional processing and creative problem-solving. As the hours drift onwards and your body lies wrapped in the hush of rest, this river of imagination continues to flow through you, carrying dreams made of soft echoes and flickering stars. Let it carry you now beyond words, past fact, through the veil that only sleep may part. The imagination rests, but it is never gone. It only deepens into the sacred stillness, where consciousness and dreams become indistinguishable from one another. Good night, dreamer. Fact 44. Even silence has its imagined form, a canvas onto which the mind softly paints meaning. In moments absent of sound, the brain does not simply experience quiet. It fills that quiet with imagined echoes, anticipations, and tonal textures drawn from memory. Neuroscientists at the Institute of Cognitive Neuroscience in London have found that during prolonged silence, the auditory cortex remains faintly active, subtly rehearsing rhythm and resonance in the absence of real input. This suggests that even nothingness becomes a space the imagination lovingly inhabits. Whether it's the remembered hush of falling snow, the muffled quiet of an old cathedral, or the heavy stillness before a long-awaited word, your mind wraps silence in story, turning absence into presence. These imagined silences have been shown to slow breathing, reduce cortisol, and send calming signals along the vagus nerve, gently lowering the body into rest. Philosophers have long described silence as the birthplace of insight, and the imagination is its first visitor. In Eastern contemplative practices, visualizing silence as a soft mist or a gentle void has been shown to deepen meditative states, blending imagery and emptiness into a single, soothing rhythm. As your thoughts loosen now, and silence envelops the edges of your mind, like the soft dimming of a lantern, know that even this final stillness carries you. It is an imagined soundlessness, echoing not with noise, but with the weightless music of your own quiet awareness. And in that silence, tender and endless, sleep finds you at last, gently and entirely, with nothing more to do, nothing more to become, but to rest, wholly at peace in the sacred quiet of a night imagined well. Fact 45. In the end, imagination is not an escape from reality, but a quiet companion to it, a way of seeing the invisible threads that connect one moment to the next, one soul to another. Cognitive scientists at Yale University suggest that imagination may be the mind's original lens, predating language and logic, shaping our first sense of self and world through curious merging of feeling, image, and meaning. In many cultures, imagination is not viewed as fantasy, but as truth spoken in a softer dialect, one that dances quietly between shadow and light. When you hold a memory, a hope, or a question in the warmth of thought, imagination gently gilds its edge, giving it shape beyond its surface. Neuroimaging research from Princeton reveals that when we engage in deeply imaginative states, our brains create neural signatures remarkably similar to those observed during profound spiritual experiences, suggesting that imagination may serve as a natural sanctuary within ourselves. The default mode network, anterior cingulate cortex, and insula work in concert during these quiet reveries, creating what researchers call a state of transcendent imagination, where boundaries between self and world soften into communion. Each reverie, each wondering, each inner scene has been a bridge. And now, as this slow journey arrives at its final rest, remember, you are both the traveler and the path, the silence and the song. Your imagination has cradled you here, folded you softly into the hush of night, and now it releases you, gently, into dreams. May your rest be deep, your dreaming easeful, and may wonder walk beside you in sleep's meadow, where night holds you, not with answers, but with a gentle yes. Good night. Fact 46. There is a quiet and lovely paradox to imagination, that by turning inward, we touch something vast, something far beyond ourselves. Though its roots begin in the folds of individual thought, its reach is wildfire, oceanic, cosmic. A study from the University of Sydney found that individuals engaged in sustained imaginative visualization often report experiences of interconnectedness, where inner landscapes mirror external wonder, and the division between self and world grows soft. This sense of internal infinity activates the precuneus and the medial temporal lobe, regions that integrate self-perception with memory and spatial awareness, crafting a moment where the imagined becomes a vessel for unity. In these moments, a single image, a door opening onto starlight, a tree whispering in evening wind, can hold all the longing and calmness in the world. Such inner visions often resemble the places where our hearts have rested longest, or where they long to go. Neuroimaging research from Cambridge University has revealed that during deep imaginative states, the brain exhibits unique patterns of activity that resemble those observed during profound meditation and contemplative practices, suggesting that imagination may serve as a natural pathway to transcendence within ourselves. And here, at the very edge of wakefulness, when the narration has quieted and the stars of thought grow dim, may you carry this one last image, this final hush. Perhaps it is the glow of a constellation never named, or the feeling of a breeze on an unnamed planet's shore. Whatever comes, let it stay with you as a blessing made not of words, but of wonder. So drift now, gently, into the velvet waters of night. There are no more facts, only the dreaming, and all of it, every imagined pane of light, every quiet fiction of peace belongs to you. Good night, Fact 47. And so, let this closing breath of thought be a final lantern, casting one last glow across the quiet lake of your awareness. For all the images, ideas, and quiet truths we've wandered through tonight, the most enduring might be this: that your imagination is not only a tool of creation, but a place of return, a sanctuary where all questions can wait, all stories can rest, and every soft longing is held in kindness. As researchers at Columbia's Center for Sleep and Cognition have found, the brain, in its final moments before sleep, resonates with a unique signature of inward focus, a neural symphony, signaling release, surrender, and welcome into silence. This transition state reveals the profound connection between imagination and restorative sleep, with EEG patterns showing how creative visualization actually prepares the mind for deeper, more healing rest. Even now, the rhythms of your breath and pulse echo the cadence of everything you've imagined, slow and steady, like footsteps crossing the final threshold into dream. Let there be no effort in your final thoughts, only softness, as the voice within dims and the stars behind your eyes open wide. The imagination that has carried you through these gentle facts now carries you one step further, into the waiting arms of rest. Nothing more is needed. Just this: let go gently and sleep. Good night, dreamer. Sleep well. Fact 48. In the hush after every story and the breath between every thought, imagination lingers as a quiet echo, reminding us that we are more than what we see or know. It hums in the corners of silence, soft as wind through leaves, shaping our lives not with noise, but with nuance. Psychologists at the University of Vienna propose that even when the conscious mind releases its grip, the subconscious imagination continues crafting meaning out of shadows and stillness, threading emotion into dreams like silver through charcoal. It is this gentle presence, this calm creativity, that makes imagination a companion for both day and night, wonder and rest. As researchers have found, moments steeped in imaginative reflection activate the same reward centers as acts of love, music, or spiritual awe, suggesting that to imagine deeply is to feel deeply. So now, wrapped in the soft cocoon of night and thought, let the last remnant of this journey drift through you like a feather over a sleeping sea, weightless and eternal. What you imagined tonight was not just a series of facts, but a quiet invitation to remember your own power to create, to feel, and to rest. As your eyes close and the velvet dark welcomes you fully, the path of dreams now lies open, lit not by stars, but by your own inner light. Sleep well, dream softly, and let your final thought tonight be not an ending, but an opening. Good night, dear dreamer.